All right. Well, thank you so much for allowing me to present today. I'm really, really excited to get started on this project. So I wanted to start by giving you guys a snapshot of my professional experience. So I was hired right out of college as a marketing manager at the Fresh Market. The Fresh Market is a specialty grocery store here based in North Carolina, where I am. And at that point in time, I had no experience. I had no educational background in the field. And I was hired to manage a team of people. So somebody took a chance on me to do something that I was not capable of doing. And it stretched me way beyond where I felt comfortable. But it was a really great platform for me to be able to get started. During my time there, we opened about 60 stores, and it was a period of significant growth for the company. I left the Fresh Market and joined a startup called Creative Snacks, where I was the first employee to join the company. And I often describe that as I was the only one dumb enough to join our founder when we had no products, no customers, no space. But in true startup fashion, I did a little bit of a lot of different things. So over the 12 years that I spent at Creative Snacks, I was able to oversee and run most areas of the business, including operations, sales, marketing, food safety, and compliance. And ultimately, we sold Creative Snacks to Kind Snacks. You may be familiar with Kind Bar, which is a pretty large company, sold worldwide. We sold that actually 4 years ago to this day. And it was a great opportunity for me to work with a large CPG brand during my 2 years at Kind. It actually sold to Mars Candy Company. So their annual sales in 2022 were $45 billion. So I'd say that, I went from this really small startup to this massive, massive company over a 12-year period. And what I learned about myself during that time is that I really am not a big CPG person, so consumer product goods person. I really do love and I thrive in a smaller entrepreneurial environment. So I left Kind in December 2021, started Emerge Growth Partners, which is a small consulting company working with some smaller food brands to gain distribution, grow sales, commercialize new items, et cetera. And ultimately, this was a stopgap for me to figure out what I wanted to be when I grew up. And that's kind of a funny question for a 40-year-old person to sit and ask themselves. But this is ultimately what led to what I hope will be my grand finale in my career in founding My Better Batch, which is a CPG brand that will be launched. We will launch a line of pre-made cookie mixes online and on grocery store shelves later this year. And that is what we are here to talk about today. So real quick, before I jump in, I'll tell you just a little bit about me. So I graduated from UNC Greensboro, so where Dr. Torres is currently sitting. The only difference is that my degree wasn't in business. My degree was in exercise and sports science. My goal was to go into sports management, but I never did pursue that field. You are all one step ahead of me at this point because of the degree that you've chosen. My business knowledge and understanding has really been built entirely on experience and a ton of mistakes. So
We want to hear about those too, because it's always best to learn from mistakes of others. We learn from mistakes, but
that's right.
more efficient to learn from mistakes of others.
That's exactly right. And, it's not often that you get things right the first time. And I think you need to not be afraid of making mistakes because I really think that it can help you grow. So I live in Kernersville, North Carolina, which is kind of in the center of North Carolina in the United States. I am really proud of what I've been able to accomplish professionally over the last 20 years, but it's nothing in comparison to my proudest accomplishment, which is my boys, Owen and Jackson. And you can see a picture of them there. They would kill me if they knew that their picture was in a presentation that was being presented around the world. So don't tell them, okay? In our house, we do a lot of two things. We do a lot of sports, and we also do a ton of baking. And so since I started my social media earlier this year, I have actually used 250 sticks of butter. So if you think about how much butter you go through in your house, it's probably not very much. We are making a lot of cookies in this house. So let's dig in. But before we start, I actually want to do a quick social media experiment and see what the power of this collective group has on a small business like my own. So I want you to head over to YouTube and I want you to go to my channel, which is My Better Batch. And there's a QR code right there. If you get your phone out and use that QR code, that's going to take you to a link tree that has links both to the YouTube channel and all of the other social media outlets. But what I want you to do, so this channel kicked
It did
off.
work for me. Definitely working. So yeah.
Oh, it is working.
Yeah.
Good. Okay, good. All right. So I kicked off this channel along with all my social media platforms earlier this year in an attempt to begin to build a group of interested cookie baking folks out there. So it takes a really, really long time to build an audience, which is why I started even before I had a product in hand. We are slowly gaining momentum. So this morning when I checked, we had 582 subscribers. Last time I looked, we had about 50 people on the call. And I know this is being recorded and a lot of you will watch this after the fact. I'm going to leave this open for the next week. So next Wednesday, we will take a look at this and see what the power of this group had on our subscriber count. But
well, you have 593 as of now. So
look at that. So
about
it
a
didn't
dozen in
take
the
any
last 20 seconds.
It didn't take any time at all. I love it. So on each of these social media platforms, I'm focused right now on generic cookie baking. Later this year, when I have a product in hand, we will shift the messaging to selling our actual product. And here's what I want you to do. I want you to subscribe and I want you to pick a video, any video. And in the comment of the video, I want you to write X Culture from, and I want you to put your location. So for me, it would be X Culture from Kernersville, North Carolina, USA. And in a week, next Wednesday, I am going to pick a winner out of all of the folks that have left a comment. And you are going to get, that winner is going to get a box of the very first product that goes out. So, and in addition to that, you're going to get a $25 Amazon gift card. You're going to get the first product and you're going to get the product before my mom. So don't share that news either. So we've already got 2 secrets out there right now. So let's see what the collective power can do. And we'll check the stats at the end of this call and report back, but let's dig into the business. So I am a super busy single full-time working mom. Prior to COVID, I was on 120 flights a year. I was doing sales. I was meeting with customers. I wasn't able to spend the time doing the things at my kids' school that I felt like I wanted to be doing. And oftentimes I was faced with a question. My kids would come to me and it always was late at night. And it was, Mom, I need to take cookies or a treat or something in for a class party. What are you going to make? And immediately, all of these questions started going through my mind. I'm trying to stay calm as I'm getting asked those questions, but it's how on earth am I going to find time to do it? Do I have the ingredients? Can I get away with buying something at the grocery store? And then I think to myself, no, somebody is going to judge me for doing that. Can I make something out of a box? And then I think to myself, no, it doesn't taste homemade. Somebody's going to know that I took a shortcut. And there's this complete feeling of mom guilt and dad guilt that sets in at that point in time. So when you go to the grocery store shelf in the US, here is what you're going to find. You're going to find a relatively small section compared to some of the other categories in the aisle, like brownies and cakes. There are 2 areas in the baking aisle that is typically selling cookie mixes. So one is what I call the mainline section. One is what I call an attribute specific question. When I talk about attribute specific, these are things like keto and paleo and gluten-free and organic. This is a section where most of the innovation and new ideas are sitting. But this section really only appeals to a very small portion of the masses, the mass consumer. So the mass consumer, they are going to that mainline aisle, and sitting in that main set here in the US are brands like Betty Crocker, Duncan Hines, and Pillsbury. These are legacy brands. These are tried and true. They've been around forever. People know them. The packaging is pretty flimsy and doesn't stand out, and the product doesn't taste homemade. So believe me, I have tested all of these cookies. At one point, they probably were good, but a lot of companies over time, and they look to drive costs out of the equation, they'll sometimes change proportion of ingredients, they'll change specifications of ingredients, and ultimately the product inside the box is just not as good as what it started as. So I ask myself this question: can we offer a line of pre-made cookie mixes that taste so good that they could pass as homemade? And the answer is yes, after a lot of testing. So I am a firm believer that in order to build a brand, you really need to understand what your competition looks like and how you can set your brand apart from what is on the shelf currently. So I spent a lot of time getting to know the competition and ultimately defining what is important to me and what is important to this brand. And there are a few things that are pretty important to me in starting My Better Batch. So number one is a clean label. So the way that I define a clean label from a dirty label, so a clean label is free from artificial flavors, artificial colors, preservatives. This allows me, by having a clean label product, this allows me to sell into US retailers like Whole Foods and Sprouts. They have some ingredient specifications. And so I wanted to have a clean product. Dirty, what I am calling dirty, it's probably not a technical term, but these are ingredients that are like vanillin, which is an artificial vanilla flavor, red dye number 40, artificial flavors, hydrogenated oils. That is what would be in some of these mixes currently have that are on the shelf today. So what I did was I plotted all of the competition. I also looked at homemade taste. I want to offer a shortcut that consumers don't have to feel guilty about taking. So not only that, I want the consumer to be so proud of what they've made that they could pass it off as their own. This is actually why the name of the company is My Better Batch. And it's because when someone is asked who made these, you can confidently and proudly answer, well, it's my better batch. And that means something different to me than it does to you. So you can see this is where I wanted My Better Batch to be. I wanted it to be clean label and I want it to taste homemade. And I really, based on what is on the shelf today, feel like this is going to be a very unique product on the market because of these differentiating factors. Now, there's a lot of competition on the shelf, and the category is dominated by the big players that I talked about: Betty Crocker, Duncan Hines, and Pillsbury. These are brands that consumers know and trust, and it is important to be differentiated. So remember, if you're asking for space on the shelf, something has to come off the shelf. And if I expect a retailer to give me that space, I need to be able to prove to the retailer why My Better Batch cookie mix should be on the shelf and why it will resonate with customers. It all comes down to dollars and cents, and the retailers want to know that their decisions will yield growth in their category. So here's a few ways that our product will compete. So we already talked about clean ingredients. Our product will be free of artificial flavors, colors, and preservatives. Our mixes will have more inclusions than the competition. So this is our chocolate chips, our chocolate chunks, our sprinkles, and our product will be the only baking mix in that mainline set that is non-GMO project verified. Our product will taste homemade. I want this, like I said, to be an easy to make cookie that tastes like it was made from scratch at home in your own kitchen. And I really want it to wow people. I want the consumer to be proud of what they made. Time is money. And I want for My Better Batch to be a kitchen shortcut that consumers know and trust will not let them down. Fun, vibrant packaging. I want the packaging to stand out on the shelf, and in a sea of flimsy stand-up pouches, our product will be sold as a bag in a box. So think a cake mix or a brownie mix with graphics that fit nicely together on the shelf, creating a billboard effect, which you can kind of see in that picture, how all of the packages, even though they're different flavor profiles, all fit together and just create this billboard effect, kind of jumping off the shelf and catching the consumer's eye. I want to build a community of bakers. There is emotion in baking. Often when you are taking the time to create something that you will share with somebody else. In fact, many times you're spending time in the kitchen with someone else. So parents are spending time with children to make something together, to create memories, and you're sharing your finished product with someone else. I don't know how someone could not smile when being offered freshly baked cookies. So it just makes people happy. And I want for our brand to create a community of bakers who are able to share. They have a place to share their ideas and their tips and their tricks and really develop this community. Our product will be, our business will be a certified woman-owned business. And this is a point of differentiation, which may not be a motivator for a consumer who's picking the product up off the shelf. But in the last 5 years, it is a motivator for retailers to take into consideration when they're making decisions on what products will go onto their shelves. So some of the biggest retailers in the US, Costco and Kroger being two of those, will prioritize women and minority-owned business owners on the shelf, which is huge. It's a huge advantage for our company. So here is a sneak peek, a little bit of a closer sneak peek into our offerings. The flavors that we will launch with are a chocolate chunk cookie. This is our take on a classic chocolate chip cookie, a classic sugar cookie, a double chocolate chip, and a celebration, which is our version of a funfetti cookie that is currently on the market today. And these mixes are really simple. They're a unique blend of dry ingredients that the consumer will pour into a mixing bowl. And at home, the consumer is asked to add 6 to 8 tablespoons of softened butter, depending on the flavor, and 1 egg. So once they mix those ingredients together and they're well combined, the dough can be scooped, placed on a baking sheet, and baked at 375 degrees for 10 to 11 minutes. And you can see on the right side of that page that what the finished product looks like. So it is better than homemade in less than 20 minutes. And I wanted to show you quickly just what our supply chain will look like. We will not be handling the manufacturing of our own product. We'll be using a co-manufacturer for this. So, here is a breakdown of kind of how things look. And Dr. Torres, do you have a question?
No, I was just saying that, or was going to say that it's very interesting how you want to build your production. So for students, again, it's important to understand that Lindsay is not planning to bake those cookies at home or open a factory. So it will be a more intelligent model that basically relies on outsourcing. I'm not sure if you want to elaborate on that, how it's going to be set up, but that's an interesting idea that students need to consider when they're opening their own companies.
So I will say, and I'll share with you, I mean, as we were starting Creative Snacks was vertically integrated. We produced our own product. So we had a 92,000 square foot facility here in North Carolina where we baked product, we manufactured product, we packaged product, we warehoused it, shipped it directly to customers or distributors from our back door. There is a lot of upfront cost associated with getting a space, hiring people, finding people, hiring people, buying equipment. And so this model is very intentional of all of the things that we've done once. And I thought this time around we could really be more of a sales and marketing focused organization and utilize a co-manufacturer. So someone who is currently blending mixes, doing this business for other people, and we could rely on them. They've got the equipment, they have the experience, they have the people, and it really would be an easier way for us to get started. Oh, you're muted.
So a couple of questions to that issue. So what would be then the advantages and disadvantages of outsourcing production? Is it just a matter of control over quality or cost or headaches that come with managing your own production? But there must be also downsides to outsourcing. So can you share
Absolutely.
more?
Well, I would say the biggest downside to outsourcing is just the lack of control, right? You can't just go right outside the doors and stand on the line and watch things happen. You're relying on somebody else to do it. You know, I think one of the advantages, especially for a startup, is we don't have the funds to be able to buy the right equipment. We could probably limp along for a little bit and make things work. But here, this gives us an opportunity to be able to work with co-manufacturers who are currently doing business with some of our competitors, quite honestly. They've got state-of-the-art equipment, both in blending and in packaging. They have teams of people that are part of their R&D and food safety teams. They have the certifications that it would cost us quite a bit of money up front to be able to not only build the systems and be able to get those certifications and maintain them, but we need people to be able to do that. So I think the advantages and disadvantages are probably a little bit different at the beginning versus an established company. But I feel like with this type of product, it is advantageous for us to be able to focus on the people who do this day in and day out. I'm actually learning a lot from them through the process.
There is a question from one of the students asking what are the chances that the manufacturer or the company that makes the product for you can just simply copy it. And my follow-up question is, so what is your value proposition? I assume it's not just the recipe, right? Or in fact, probably not the recipe at all. So it's not that they can copy the recipe and run with it. So what's that secret sauce that makes you unique, and why others cannot do what you do?
Well, I think our product is so a couple things. There was a couple questions in there. So
Copying.
the first one I think was, how can we make sure that somebody doesn't knock it off? And in business, that happens. We have agreements in place, NDAs in place, which protect our recipes and the work that has been developed. But people can take your things and they can replicate them. And I think that is one of the downsides to using a co-manufacturer is you do relinquish some of that control. I think you had asked about kind of what is our secret sauce and what is our value proposition. The reality is when you walk down the baking aisle and you look at what is sold there, whether it be cake mixes, brownie mixes, pancake mixes, cookie mixes, they are all very similar. And I think what the value in the secret sauce is less in the ingredients that are inside the bag and more how that product is marketed to the consumer. So, I think that the product could be knocked off. I hope that the way that we go to market, how we market the product, and really the brand that we build to support the product will be our secret sauce.
Mm-hmm. Very good. Yeah.
That help answer the question?
No, makes perfect sense. So you're more of a kind of Nike company rather than and those who don't know, so Nike, they don't make their own shoes. They design them, they market them, they provide all of the sort of support, but they outsource the actual production. So they don't have the factories, they don't hire people who stitch the shoes. So, and it sounds like that's the model you have in mind. So you will be more on the creative side, design of the recipes, I'm not sure, or developing the recipes,
sure.
Marketing, presenting, building the brand, but letting somebody else mix the flour and sugar and what else goes into those products, right?
That's exactly right. And what I will share with you guys is in food, this is a very, very common practice. In fact, some of the brands, the larger brands that I talked about earlier, Betty Crocker, Pillsbury, Duncan Hines, there is a very strong possibility that those brands will be made in the co-manufacturer that I choose. Maybe not all three of them, but several of them you could see. And so this is just a very common practice in food.
Yeah.
So the responsibility of My Better Batch at this point, we are developing those recipes. We are developing packaging. We are responsible for the pricing and the P&L, our innovation and ideas, our marketing and sales strategies. We will be doing all of the promotional planning. We will be handling all of the freight kind of back and forth. We will be managing our certification. So our woman-owned business certification, our non-GMO project verification certification. For right now, we'll be managing our e-commerce sales and shipping fulfillment of all e-commerce orders. We are utilizing that co-manufacturer to procure ingredients. Now we have set what those ingredients are, what those specifications of ingredients are, but they will be doing the sourcing. The advantage with using a co-manufacturer for sourcing of ingredients, kind of going back to that original question, is they have purchasing power. They have purchasing power due to the volume that is flowing through their lines to be able to buy ingredients at a lower price than I am able to at this point with no distribution. So we're relying on their purchasing power. They're doing the supply procurement. So our boxes, the film that the inner bag will be in, the box.
Oh, does the hassle of managing the payroll? I mean, you don't want to deal with,
That's
what
right.
number of people, that's a whole,
That's
supplies.
exactly.
They don't have
Yep.
feelings, people do.
And as our company grows, as we get larger, there may be things that we're currently relying on the co-manufacturer to do that would be advantageous for us to be able to do when we're big and we're distributing nationally and we have the volume to support it. So the co-man will be doing R&D and innovation for us as well. They're doing this day in and day out, and so we have a lot to learn from their teams that do this. They'll be doing the blending of our mixes, the packaging of our mixes, and then they'll be adhering to all of the food safety regulations. And in food, it is really stringent, and they've already built those systems and those processes and those programs to be able to support all of those food safety regulations. We will then be utilizing, so the co-manufacturer, they are handling the making of the product. They will not warehouse the product. So then the product has to go to an outside storage space that handles food distribution. So we will utilize an outside warehouse for that. That outside warehouse will then ship the product on behalf of My Better Batch. And that product will either go to the retailer where we can ship direct, or it will go to a distributor and then to the retailer, and then ultimately to the shelf for the consumer to purchase.
Lindsay, we have already a lot of questions, so let us let you finish the presentation, but then maybe we need to move into the Q&A because they're coming in so fast that I cannot read them. Not to mention that I have a bunch of them in the email.
Okay. All right. Well, I will try and finish this up. So as you can see and hear, we are very much in startup mode. And a lot of work was done already, but there is a lot of work left to do. So this year's focus for me has been on getting the product finalized and commercialized. And we've been able to do that. The recipes have been developed. The packaging has been designed. We're trying to finalize the back of the pack right now. Our social media platforms have been established, and we have a minimum of weekly content going up. On some of those platforms, there's content going up daily. Our website has been established. The certifications that I've talked about, applications have been complete. We've got co-manufacturers engaged. I've kind of got it down to 3, and our costing analysis has begun. So we are really focused on what is left to do. I would imagine that there are a lot of questions around marketing strategy, budget, pricing structure, both online and in retail, promotional spending allowance, et cetera. And none of this at this point has been completely fleshed out. This is where your research is really critical to me. So my focus has been on establishing our final recipes and determining our final co-manufacturer, which will dictate our final cost, where we're warehousing, and ultimately the retail shelf, the retail price point. I hope that you can approach the research questions that have been sent out with a startup entrepreneurial spirit. So this company is new. We're working with a fairly limited budget, and until retail distribution is gained, we are hungry, no pun intended, to establish our brand on the shelf and begin to grow. So here are the areas that I am asking for your assistance on. And the packet of information that has been sent out has very detailed questions in these 5 buckets. And you will have the ability to impact our priorities, our processes, our strategy for growth. You have the ability to watch a company begin to sell a brand new item and have a hand in generating insights and ideas that we can actually use. There are not many layers to this organization. So for now, there's me and a small group of investors who bring industry experience, relationships, business knowledge, and a track record for growing successful companies. Obviously, I'm currently focused in the US market, but your insights will be really critical to me as I think about the approach for growth, potential for export business, and opportunity that exists beyond the US market. So I've included in the overview that you've received a few additional slides that talk about some data points in the baking category, the baking mix consumer, which could be helpful for you as you work on your research. Contact information is here, and I'm sure that can be sent out. I can coordinate with you on office hours. I will keep my calendar open and have office hours from 1 to 1:30 Eastern time on Tuesdays. So we'll get that set up.
That's good to know.
And that concludes the information that I have.
All right, so then let's go to questions. So Therapat was patiently raising his hand, so I'll add him to panel here so he can ask the question.
Okay.
And then meanwhile, I'll try to categorize the questions in the chat so that we can ask them more efficiently. In fact,
okay.
If I may, while Therapat is activating his microphone. So geography, lots of questions about the geography. You are in the United States. I assume the United States is the primary market, at least for the initial stages, but you also mentioned the desire and readiness to expand into other markets. Tell us more about your geographic plans, so to speak, or maybe reservations. Maybe there are some countries you are not interested in, or perhaps some that you're specifically interested in.
Well, as you can imagine, my focus has been on how we're going to get started, which will be in the US and probably Canadian market. So that is where my immediate focus has been. I think the research that you guys are going to do is really going to help enlighten me about where this product could resonate in other places. So I would say that there's nothing that is off the table at this point. Is it part of our 2 to 3 year plan? Probably not, but beyond that, as we do gain distribution and we gain some efficiencies in being able to drive up volume, or the volume of product being produced, I think the research that you're able to pull together will be really critical to me. There are probably a lot of places where cookies may not resonate at all. And I am aware of that. And so you might be sitting in one of those geographical locations where cookies are not popular, and it really wouldn't resonate on your grocery store shelf.
One important question in our in the challenge descriptions is or request is to interview potential buyers or customers, but also maybe distributors, retailers, I don't know, partners, and so on. So in the initial stages, students will be trying to understand the market by talking to maybe their friends about, whether or not they would like a product like that. Maybe visiting local store owners, asking if they would be selling a product like that. Maybe there will be some larger distributors. So can you tell us more about how they should approach it? Whom should they talk to? What they should ask? How they can educate themselves and prepare themselves to be, to work on a challenge like this, but also what kind of information would be of much interest to you?
Yeah, no, I think it's a great question. So I think for right now, we are focused maybe more at a higher level than actually talking to retailers or talking to customers. I think what we're trying to understand is, in your geographical location, is this a product that is on the shelf today? And if it is, what is the competitive landscape look like? What do your shelves look like? What are the brands there? What are the flavors that they're selling? What are the weights? What are the retail prices? And we've got all of that outlined in the materials. I think that is step one, is really understanding what is currently on the shelf. And so I think as we go down the path and working together on projects like this, we can then, we're in defining mode. We have not established, and we've not established everything just yet. And so I think as we go down the road and really get these things defined, then I think it will be a matter of being able to go in and ask some more detailed questions of potential outlets where this product could be sold.
Therapat, you've been patiently waiting, and I see your video, so you seem to be ready. So go ahead with your questions. I see you left several of them in the Q&A window. So now your chance.
Okay. So hello, Professor Waz, and also
hello. Where are you located? So what's your geographic location, just so we know?
Oh, I'm from Thailand.
Thailand. Oh, we will be going to Thailand with the X-Culture Symposium in 9 months. So maybe we'll see you in person. And
Okay.
Reich and Bangkok, what's your location specifically?
Oh, yeah, Bangkok and Metro.
Okay, very good. Yeah, go ahead with your questions, please. And we don't
So
see
I was
the video popped on and then popped off, so disappeared. So I'm not sure if intentional or not, but it'd be nice to see you if you have the camera.
oh,
Yeah,
hi.
we see you now. Very
Hi.
nice.
Hi. So I was gonna ask Mrs. Lindsay about like if you I'm thinking of overseeing to whether do you think to focus on just domestic market in the US or do you plan to go internationally?
So I think right now, as we establish the company, it's important for me to be focused in the U.S. market. That is what I am most knowledgeable about, and that is where I feel the most comfortable. And just due to my
Okay.
location and where the product will be produced, that makes the most sense. I think through the research that you guys will be doing, I think we're going to learn about other places where this product could resonate that I have not thought about and is not part of my kind of initial startup plan. So I think there is opportunity beyond the US market, and we're going to work through the research that you guys will do to better understand that.
Yeah, yeah, thank you for your answer.
Mhm.
I really appreciate your innovative idea of coming up such an innovation. Yeah, and I think I'll work through it. So that I have a direction now that you want to focus on domestic market. Okay, so I'll be developing ideas on US domestic market. Okay.
Mhm.
Although to the students, I would strongly encourage you to survey your own markets for similar products. I know
Mhm.
that some countries may, first the culinary tastes may be different, but I also know, like, for example, especially in Asia, or at least looking at it from the United States, you guys have some very interesting products, not only, interesting and even weird flavors, but also interesting ways to distribute products.
Mhm.
I was in Europe recently, like coffee, for example, you have these fancy machines that you just, drop a couple of euros or scan the card and you get all kinds of fancy coffees, whereas in the United States, we have to go to a coffee shop to get a good coffee. In Asia, you have these vending machines that can give you like a proper hot dinner, like it's, unthought of, or at least not available in the United States. But maybe you also have some interesting solutions to these sort of pre-made cookies or, cookie mixes. So maybe you will find something interesting there. And if you do have something like that, maybe you can also interview the manufacturers of those products and see how they make the product, distribute the product, the logistics, the advertisements. So that might be something interesting. So anyway, there is a question from Rita. She's asking about the ingredients. I'm not sure if she wants to know your secret recipe, but at least,
Mhm.
what are the main ingredients? I assume it would be flour and sugar and maybe something else,
Yeah.
eggs maybe, but
Yeah.
what
No,
is
I'm happy to share more about that. So I am a firm believer that in order to have a great product, we don't need to reinvent the wheel. We don't need to do something so incredibly different than what is there today. I think it just needs to be done in a different way, and it needs to be marketed well, and we need to stand for something and have points of differentiation. The product inside the bag they are standard ingredients. Now, they will be sourced and will be non-GMO project verified, but it is flour, sugar, baking powder, baking soda, cocoa powder, brown sugar. So these are standard ingredients these were developed in my home kitchen. So there's not anything abnormal that you wouldn't find in the baking aisle, and you probably wouldn't find in maybe not your pantry, maybe your parents' pantry, but nothing out of the normal.
Yeah. Rita and Rimsha basically asking the same question, and that's variations of the product. Again, different flavors. I remember in Japan, I saw like chocolate with the taste of bacon, like they have some really interesting flavors.
Good.
But
Yeah.
I'm not sure, would you be willing or open to the idea of developing new flavors to target specific market preferences?
Yeah, so absolutely. When I originally started thinking through this concept, I felt like in order to differentiate, one of the ways that we needed to do that was by offering unique flavor profiles to what was out there today. And then I was really quickly reminded that in most categories, in jams and jelly and yogurt, there are all of these obscure, unique flavors, but there are a few top three flavors that make make up most of the sales. And so what I did was I kind of put those unique flavor profiles to the side to really focus on the main flavors that are sold in the aisle. One of the things that I want for these main flavors to be able to be is a base to do all kinds of different things with. So if you watch any of my YouTube videos, don't laugh, number one. But number two, what you'll find is that oftentimes I'm taking a simple recipe, like a chocolate chip cookie recipe, and I'm using it to make 4 or 5 different unique things. One of the things I'm working on right now is it's a pumpkin cookie recipe that I've made, and I'm using that to do 4 different unique pumpkin ideas. So I want for these cookies to be able to be a base that then through the community that we build, I can show you how to take that recipe and make something over the top and great. And you've been able to take a shortcut in getting the cookie done. But I do think there is seasonality, especially that's probably where a lot of the opportunity exists. Baking is one of those categories in the grocery store that during the winter months, during our Thanksgiving and Christmas holiday here in the US, baking really sees an uptick. And so I think there are a lot of flavor profiles that could be seasonally relevant, but I also think there's opportunity for growth, not just in cookies. So let me just share real quick. I think once we establish cookies, then the same process, so the same co-manufacturer who is blending together dry ingredients for cookies, I can then develop cakes, recipes, brownies, things like that, and we can very easily expand into other categories within the baking aisle. So hopefully that answers a couple questions.
A bunch of questions about business. So one, if you had to do it again, what would you do differently? And here we're talking about the business side, not the recipe, not the product, but more as an entrepreneurial side. We almost don't hear you, so you sort of disappeared, but not completely.
Okay. Are you able to hear me?
Yeah, all good now.
Okay, sorry about that. So I think the question was
yes, so if you had to do it again, starting a business like this one with and obviously students, again, keep in mind that Lindsay has very, very rich business managerial experience. So perhaps the mistakes or challenges she had or made are different from those of maybe some of you less experienced people may be doing. So, but if you had to do it again, you wake up and it's 2019 again. So, and you can repeat the last few years, what would you do differently?
I don't know that I would change a whole lot. And I know that sounds like a really dumb answer, probably. I think there are some things that, and I think I have a few of my investors are hiding in this call, so they're probably laughing to themselves right now. As we got Creative Snacks started, I would say that, having come from a retail background and then going to a manufacturing business, those businesses are entirely different. And I would say that starting that company, we didn't know a whole lot about what we were doing. I think that's a pretty safe thing to say out loud. And I vividly remember equipment showing up and looking at each other going, oh my gosh, now we got to figure out what this does. I think there are some key roles. One of the main takeaways that comes to mind for me is that there are some key roles that we waited to hire for. And one of those was hiring a really strong salesperson. And we waited several years before we were able to hire the caliber of person that we wanted to be able to run our sales organization. And I think that was a learning for me once we did get the right person in the position, is that person really paid for themselves and they drove sales in such a positive direction that I wish we had done that much earlier in the process. I think, so I think that's one of the main takeaways, but I think
So that
they're
salesperson, is it what managing advertisement or meeting with
no, managing actually going into the retailers and selling the business. So the way this process works is, the categories, grocery categories they're reviewing, or the category managers are reviewing their sets typically once a year. And so we would go in. So for instance, Whole Foods is reviewing their baking set later this year. And if we are not able to get in there and present our product to the Whole Foods manager this year, if we're not ready for some reason, we have to wait an entire year before we go in again. So it's not just something that once we have a product, we can just go in and share it. There is a schedule and a cycle for making changes. And so that salesperson was responsible for taking the product that we had to the right people, having the right relationships, driving sales, planning promotions. And that was just such a critical role to help us grow.
Money side, so how are you doing in terms of the revenue at this time? Are you seeking to raise additional investment? And what are your biggest, so if you were able to raise more money, what would you spend it on, or what are the needs at this time in terms of the resources?
So our revenue is a big fat 0 right now. Interestingly, I probably am closer to being able to generate some revenue through the YouTube channel. Once that gets to a certain subscriber count and view, we are able to start making just a little bit of money off of ads, which is interesting and definitely not what I set out to do when I started my Better Batch. So that is kind of unique and different. I anticipate that our trial run of product at the co-manufacturer will likely happen in November of this year, so in a month from now. And my plan is to be able to put product up on our website to sell, if nothing else, be able to start selling online. So I'm hoping that we can generate a little bit of revenue this year, but most of that will start next year. We have already have the teams of people in place to help us present products to some outside retailers later this year, which is really exciting. But so that will, and there is oftentimes the sell-in process into a grocery store. It's not like I go in and I give my great idea and they say, yes, I want it, and I start shipping product the next week. There's typically a 12 to 18 month window that it takes to be able to find the right people, present the product, get your answers back, and start shipping product to them. And so it's a pretty lengthy process. So then to go on to the second question, which was around raising money, I anticipate that we will do another round of raising money from investors, probably in the near future. And really that is going to be used to help support the business as we are running product. That product doesn't necessarily have a home yet. And so we'll be running product packaging. It also will probably be helping us with some marketing and advertising. And so that's that, and really promotions, promotional spend. There is another interesting thing that comes along with selling into food retailers, grocery retailers, which is oftentimes people are spending or paying money to be on the shelf. We call that slotting dollars. And so oftentimes there is a one-time cost associated with each SKU, each item that you're able to get on the shelf. And it's often that calculation is done by SKU and number of stores that goes into. So there's some upfront costs that we will need to make sure that we can cover if we want to do business with the caliber of retailer that we have our eyes set on.
Several questions about a difficult and potentially maybe easy issue of health. So cookies are associated with sugar. Sugar is not associated with health. So Varsha and Arena are asking, how are you approaching the issue of health, healthy eating, healthy dieting, but also there was a question whether you see it as an opportunity. How do you position yourselves? Can your recipes be developed to be sort of a healthier alternative to traditional cookies? And so I hope I packaged them correctly.
No, that's a great question. So, that's a tricky question to answer. Cookies, baked goods, the things that you walk down the aisle in the baking aisle to purchase, you are not often purchasing to get healthier.
Yeah.
In terms of health and better eating, one of the ways that we've approached that is through clean ingredients. So making sure that they're ingredients that I would want to be able to have my children eat. So as I mentioned earlier, we're free of artificial flavors, artificial colors, preservatives, things like that, and the desire to be non-GMO compliant. I look at cookies as being, and they're obviously an indulgent treat, but they're proportioned very well to be able to just have a cookie, and maybe be able to control the amount that folks are consuming at a time. So portion control. I also think through the community and the fact that we are using these as base recipes to do a lot of different things with, we will be able to develop some, right now I'm having customers add butter and an egg, but there are probably some alternative wet ingredients that could be added to the mix by the consumer at home, to be able to make that cookie somewhat healthier if the consumer desires that. So I think over time that can be developed. But I was very intentional with wanting to make sure that this was a product that appealed to the masses. So
Yeah.
remember earlier, I talked about the fact that there were 2 different places in our grocery store where you find cookies. They often sit very close to one another. One of them is that mainline set. So that is where the big competitors are currently sitting. The other one is in this attribute specific set. So there's a lot of companies out there that are selling the gluten-free, the paleo, high protein, and a lot of companies that have done it very well. There is a much smaller portion of the consumer group that is purchasing product in that category versus the mainline category.
Just regular
So I have
straight
been,
cookie.
that's
Not
exactly right. So
sugar-free
there's
cookie and not gluten-free cookie.
that's
cookie.
right. And so I was very intentional. People have asked that question a lot. What are you going to do to make it healthier? Cookies are indulgent,
Yeah.
and they are an indulgent treat. And what you'll find in the packet of information that I provided is that people are still buying indulgence. In fact, women they are more likely to buy indulgent things, which you wouldn't think, but they are as an impulse buy. And so take a look at the consumer data that I've shared with you in that packet. It's very interesting. So I want to be able to sell a product in the category to the folks that are there to purchase. And so this cookie has really been developed around that.
Yeah. So there is a question from Rita, and instead of asking the question, I'll make that as a request for students. So she's asking about your willingness to modify the recipe to comply with the EU sugar regulations. And I didn't even know that EU has sugar regulations, but I guess rather than asking the question, the request would be, yes, do research in your country and see if there are any specific regulations on what kind of recipes could be used. So maybe there is indeed some sort of a limit on the amount of sugar or other ingredients and products. Maybe there are some other interesting requirements, like, for example, in the United States, the Tic Tacs that we buy, I just recently learned. So, on the packaging, it says 0 sugar. And also you may have noticed that each Tic Tac is 0.49 grams. And so the question is, why is it 0.49 grams? Why is it not 0.5 grams?
Because it would round up.
Yeah, in the United States, the regulations are that if the amount of the ingredient is less than 0.5 grams, you can say that it does not contain that ingredient. And so even though Tic Tacs are 99% sugar, they actually say that it's 0% sugar because it's less than the legally required amount to be disclosed. And so they sell you sugar while saying legally that it's 0 sugar. So maybe there are some interesting regulations like that in your country that the company can or needs to be aware of. So yes, do that research, share with us those findings. So maybe if EU is very big on regulations actually. So it would be interesting to know what the rules are.
Absolutely.
Since we are out of time, one more question that came up earlier, and I thought it would be best to ask at the end. What is your exit strategy? Are you planning to do it for a long time? Are you planning to sell it once it becomes profitable, or something else? Like there was a question, for example, from Martin about whether you're willing to sell shares of your company to a co-manufacturer. So basically, what's the long-term strategy in terms of cashing out
Mhm.
or not, or keeping it for your grandchildren?
Sure. Yeah, I don't anticipate that My Better Batch will be a brand that will be passed down through the generations. I am planning to get those boys of mine to work. So just so you know that they are definitely gonna be engaged and involved a little bit. But you know, I am building this to be able to ultimately sell it. And having gone through this already before, I think there's been some learnings through that process. I When that will take place and who that will be to, whether that is to a private equity firm or whether that is to a strategic partner, like one of the competitors on the shelf, quite honestly, I don't know. I don't know when that will take place, and I don't know who that transaction will happen with. I would say that, you know, there are a few big players in the baking aisle. So kind of going outside of cookie mixes, but looking at the aisle in general. The way that large companies innovate is through the purchase and acquisition of smaller companies. And so that is definitely in my mind. I want for this product to be competitive on the shelf, but at the same time, there are some brands that I'd like to sit beside and complement, because in the grand scheme of things, that might be helpful to us. So I would say, you know, there is a plan to sell the company. It is hard to define exactly what that looks like, having not sold a single item yet. So when we have this follow-up conversation in a year from now and do some other projects together, there might be some additional information that I can share with you on how our progress will guide that process.
Yeah. All right. A few sort of blitz Q&A. So we have about a dozen unanswered questions, and we are
That's
out
okay.
of time and over time. But so Sam is asking if we can connect with Lindsay anytime later. So Lindsay was gracious enough to offer office hours every Tuesday, 1 p.m. to 1:30 p.m. We'll circulate the access. Anonymous NND is asking if the decision to utilize non-GMO ingredients was a health decision or a promotion and marketing decision. I'm not sure if it can be a binary answer, one or the other, but brief answer.
So I think it's twofold. I mean, I kind of going back to the question about mindfulness of health and ingredients. I think that was definitely something taken into consideration. When we think about points of differentiation on the shelf, none of the product that I want to sit beside is currently non-GMO project verified. And so when we're sitting in front of a retail buyer and we are selling the idea of why My Better Batch needs a spot on the shelf, that was an area of differentiation that we are able to claim that our competitors can't. And so there are a couple different reasons that was taken into account.
Mm-hmm.
That does create a premium of ingredients. So even though we're using commodity ingredients that are common, there is a premium to some of the non-GMO ingredients that will be inside the bag.
Yeah. Some people who joined later asking if the recording will be available. Yes, just give me a few hours to render the video. There is a question from Roshni. If one wanted to work for your company, are you hiring basically, or what would it take to get a job or internship? Maybe too early, but any opportunities in that area?
Well, considering that it is a team of one in myself, now I do have some outside folks that are helping me with some of the social media right now. I have an intern that's helping with social media, and I have another guy that is helping me with all of my longer YouTube videos, and some outside editing that's taking place. I think the opportunities are probably pretty great. As we grow and gain distribution and get the product established, there will be a need to be able to fill some critical roles. And so I don't know exactly what that looks like sitting here right now, but that will begin to unfold in the next couple of months. And you guys are going to have an opportunity to really see that happening, given the timing of the project that we're working on together.
Yeah. And probably the last question. So from Abhiraj, your most memorable failure or setback?
Oh, you know, I think I think it's gaining new business and losing business. And sometimes you can do a really great job and you can be a really great partner, and the decision is made to eliminate your product on the shelf and try something new. And sometimes that's done because the product doesn't perform, or because your company hasn't been easy to work with, or something has happened. But sometimes that's done even when you do all of the right things. And so, as an individual, and as I've been very, very, very fortunate to work with companies that operate with integrity, it's hard when things like that happen, because you want to be able to attribute it to something terrible and negative that has taken place. And sometimes that's just not the case. So I think that probably resonates more than anything else.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Yes. Well, let's stop here. So thank you so much, Lindsay. Very interesting educational story. So I hope soon enough you will be exiting as a unicorn, I don't know, acquired by Mars.
I feel like I haven't even entered yet.
Right. But again, hopefully another 3, 5, 10 years we'll see it. And so students, again, we are waiting for your creative ideas and solutions. So hopefully there will be a lot of good suggestions for building and developing this brand and expanding into multiple markets. So thank you.
Yeah,
so
and
much.
I wanted to just give an update. I see all the comments on my app right now. So we're currently sitting at 607. I don't know if you guys can see that, but 607.
Yeah. So we added a few dozen.
Yeah, which is awesome. So for all of the folks that are going to be watching this at another time, I'm going to leave this open for the next week. So please, you really do have the ability to be able to make an impact on a small business who is just getting started.
Thank you so much. All right, everyone, then good night. Have a nice day. Good morning, wherever you are. And thank you so much, Lindsay, for this wonderful presentation.
Thank you.
For your experience.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.